So today I'm going to be answering the most asked question I get in Destiny, which is what can I play for $0 in Destiny 2 as a free-to-play player? So let's get into it. If it ends up being helpful, hit the like button. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys, and let's get right into it. So to start us off, you're going to be able to do the New Light quest. So that is the first quest you can do when you get into Destiny 2, and this is kind of going to hold your hand and kind of teach you the ways of Destiny to a certain degree, but I do understand, I think we all understand collectively, that this doesn't do the best job of getting you acquainted with the game. But this is going to be where you start. So you are going to be able to have the New Light quest. It's going to start you off on the Cosmodrome. It's going to take you to multiple different places. Once you finish the New Light quest, you're going to get the Spark of Hope quest, where if you finish that, you can get the Risk Runner exotic. Also, if you're wondering how to get power levels, make sure to check out my power leveling video guide after this, just in case you're wondering what power levels I can get as a free-to-play player. I've already kind of broke that down, so I'm not going to do that again, but after this video, check that out if you're curious on what exactly you can do to get to 1810 with just being a free-to-play player as well. Now let's go over the story missions that you're going to be able to access as well. So you're going to be able to access the first mission from the Shadowkeep campaign, the Beyond Light campaign, the Witch Queen campaign, as well as the Nightfall campaign, so it kind of lets you get a taste of each of the different campaign missions so you can kind of see if it's, I guess, a campaign that you want to buy. But in this case, we're going to be using this to unlock our different destinations. Now let's talk about the destinations that you're going to have access to. So you're going to have access to the Cosmodrome, to the EDZ, to Nessus, to the Dreaming City, to the Moon, to Europa, to Throne World, and to Neomuna as well. So you're going to have access to 8 different destinations that you're going to be able to explore. Within these destinations, you're going to have different activities that you can take part in. So the first thing is going to be a patrol that you can do. So there's going to be patrols all over the destination that you can scan, and once you do, if you do the patrol, you'll be able to sometimes knock out bounties, also get materials and glimmer. Also, there's things called public events. These will spawn every once in a while in different locations. You can see them on your map, and when you start them, you'll get activities from the chest when you finish them. And also there's a secret way for each of the public events that's unique to each public event that you can do to make it a heroic public event, and you can get more rewards from that as well. So the public events are going to be unique based on the location that you are. So there's going to be public events on Europa that'll be different than public events that you might be doing on Nessus. There's also lost sectors all over the destinations, and you can see them from the map, and when you go to these hidden locations, you'll be able to take part in the lost sector, then kill a boss, and then open a chest and get loot. And then after that, you'll also unlock the legendary lost sector version of it. And so the legend lost sector rotates every single day, and I'll provide a link if you're curious on what the lost sector is that's legendary each day, and you can unlock it by doing the normal version first, and then after you've done the normal version, you can take part in that legendary lost sector, and these can give exotics, which is pretty cool. So if you're curious on how you can farm exotics, this is going to be a way to do that. So you're going to want to unlock all of these lost sectors. You'll also have access to the Vanguard Ops playlist, which is pretty cool because you'll be able to access strikes within this playlist that you normally wouldn't have access to because you don't have the expansions for them. But within this playlist, you can do the Arms Dealer Strike, Exodus Crash, the Inverted Spire, Lake of Shadows, the Insight Terminus, Warden of Nothing, the Corrupted, the Scarlet Keep, the Disgraced, Glassway, the Devil's Lair, Fallen Saber, Proving Grounds, the Light Blade Strike, Birthplace of the Vile, and then the newest strike, the Hypernet Current from Neomuna. So you have access to 16 different strikes within this playlist that you can try out and experience all of them and see which ones are your favorite. Also in the Vanguard Ops playlist, you'll have access to the Battlegrounds activities too from Season 16 as well as Season 19. So these are kind of similar to strikes, but a little different and more drawn out, to be honest, but they are fun to do at least once. And so these are on Nessus, on the Europa, on the Cosmodrome, but then also there's one from last season that's from Mars as well, so you can experience Mars for the first time as well within this playlist. There's over 4 battlegrounds in there already, so total there's over 20 things that you can do within this playlist. Also, let's talk about what's free to play within the Crucible experience as well. So you're gonna have 23 different maps, so let's go through them real quick. You have Cathedral of Dust, you have the Anomaly, Twilight Gap, Dead Cliffs, Disjunction, Distant Shore, Burnout, Eternity, Exodus Blue, Fortress, Widow's Court, Javelin 4, Pacifica, Convergence, Fragment, Bannerfall, Altar of Flame, Endless Veil, Midtown, Vostok, Rusted Lands, Cauldron, Radiant Cliffs, and Wormhaven. Also, there are going to be some more maps that are coming in Season 21, 22, and 23, so I want to discuss those real quick as well for those that are watching in the future. You'll have Meltdown that's coming in Season 21, which is a map that was previously in the game that was taken out. Also, there's a new Vex Network map that's coming in Season 22, and then we're getting the Citadel returning map that's coming in Season 23. So total, by the end of this year, there'll be 26 maps that are available for you to play if you're a free-to-play player. Also, there's 7 different Crucible modes that are either permanent or that are in the Crucible rotation, so they come on a week-to-week basis. So that's Control, Clash, Survival, Rumble, Showdown, Elimination, and Mayhem. And also to note, once again, if anybody is watching this from in the future, later Bungie is going to be adding the following modes. They're going to be adding Countdown as well as Countdown Rushed into the Labs playlist, which the Labs playlist is what Bungie does where they test out certain game modes within a lab, and then they take feedback and take data, and then they bring them back in a better state permanently later. And then also we're going to be getting another mode called Checkmate Control. So those are the modes and the maps that you can experience for free within Destiny if you're playing PvP. Next, let's talk about Gambit, and there's not much to say here, but let's at least talk about what you can do within Gambit. So within Gambit, there are 4 maps that you do have access to. There's Deep 6, which is on Titan. There's Emerald Coast, which is on the Earth. There's Legion's Folly, which is on Nessus. And then there's the new Arcadia, which is on Mars. So just for reference, the last map that was added was in 2019. So yeah, there's 4 Gambit maps. Try them out. Next, let's talk about Nightfall. So there's 9 different Nightfalls that you have access to as a free-to-play player, so I'll go through them now. If Arms Dealer is the Nightfall, you can access it. Also Lake of Shadows, also Exodus Crash, the Inverted Spire, Insight Terminus, the Disgraced, Devil's Lair, Fallen Saber. These are strikes that are at a much higher difficulty, and then with them being at a higher difficulty, they're also more rewarding. So it's a much easier way to get exotics, to get more powerful gear, and to get other infusion and power-up fuels such as Ascendant Shards. Also, there's Grand Masters, which are even more rewarding versions of Nightfalls that also give Adept loot. So when you finish them, they can give you things like the Adept Hothead and the Adept Hung Jury and other Adepts that we've seen in the past. And these are going to be the exact same strikes that I mentioned before. So anytime any of those 9 Nightfalls are in the rotation as a Grand Master, you can knock these out and you can get Adept weapons from them, as well as Ascendant Shards. Since we were just talking about higher level strikes, now let's talk about higher level crucibles. So you will have access to the competitive playlist, which is seeing a rework very soon, so you can test out your skills and get all the way up to the Ascendant rank. And there's also exclusive rewards that are coming to the playlist. But for now, if you're playing in this current moment, make sure you at least are going to snag the Rose Hand Cannon, which was a fan favorite back in the past. Also, you have access to Iron Banner, which is a mode where Saladin comes a few times a season, and it's a playlist that isn't light level enabled, so you can jump right in. You can get pinnacle rewards from it, as well as really cool Iron Banner armor sets. There's 5 different ones that you can go back and focus and grab engrams from, and then there's also a bunch of Iron Banner weapons that you can try as well. Next, let's talk about access to private matches. So you have access to do private matches in Crucible, so you can try out all the different maps, as well as trying out all the different modes. And then there also is private matches for Gambit. Admittedly, I've only ever done this once in all of the years that Destiny's been around, but it was a fun day. We did Primal vs. Redeem one day in Gambit, and it was fun. But I haven't really touched this one much. But you do have access to private matches in Crucible and Gambit if you want to try them out. Also, you'll have access to the Helm and the Farm, which admittedly are more tied to the season, but you can check them out, and maybe you can meet some Guardians within there as well. While you're in the tower, you'll also notice that you have access to a kiosk that's right next to the vault. Within here, you can buy any Year 1 exotic for free as long as you have the materials for it. Also, you'll see that it takes exotic ciphers for some and spoils for others, so the exotic cipher you can get either from your season pass, or you can also get 1 a week from Xur, which we'll talk about here in a second, and then the raid exotic Legend of Acreus, you'll need spoils from the raid in order to buy that one. While we're on the topic of Xur, let's talk about how he operates. So Xur comes every Friday reset, and then he stays until every Tuesday reset. So he can be in the Tower Hangar, he can be on the Winding Cove, which is on the EDZ, and he can also be in the Watcher's Grave, which is on Nessus. He offers exotics that you can pick up on a weekly basis, and he also has a weekly cipher that you can grab once a week, and you can buy exotics from the kiosk each week if you have the materials for it. So next, let's talk about seasonal challenges. So you can do each week's seasonal challenges as long as they're accessible and you don't have to pay for them. Sometimes it'll require you to do like the week's story, and so obviously you won't be able to do that since you don't have the season pass, but a lot of the seasonal challenges you can do, and these will reward you with experience as well as Bright Dust. And while we're on the topic of Bright Dust, that does segue us to the Eververse. So Eververse is more so tied to money, but there are things you can buy from Eververse for Bright Dust. So each week there is a Bright Dust rotation of things that you can buy, and I'll link the calendar in the description so you can see what Eververse items items are coming up each week that are available for Bright Dust so that you can get cool stuff. Also, another thing that people don't usually think about is the Season Pass. So even though the Season Pass is normally something that you buy, there are things on the Season Pass that you can get for free. Admittedly, less things, but one of the cool things is at rank 35, you can get the Season's Exotic. So this season, it's a Stasis Bow, but each season that you do this, you can pick up another exotic from the Season Pass for free at rank 35 as long as you're just keeping up with the game. You'll have access to Vanguard bounties from Zavala, you'll have access to Crucible bounties from Shaxx, you'll have access to Gambit bounties from Drifter, you'll have access to Gunsmith bounties from Banshee, you'll have access to Hawthorne's bounties, you'll have access to Nessus bounties from Failsafe, you'll have access to EDZ's bounties from Devrim, you'll have access to the Cosmodrone's bounties from Shahan, and then you'll have access to the Dreaming City bounties from Petra. As a free-to-play player, you also get access to the new feature Loadouts, where you can save your favorite loadouts, which is a very nice thing, and then you can also get more loadouts through Guardian Ranks, which is another thing that you have access to as a free-to-play player, which is Bungie's way of helping to teach and help you to learn how to play and understand the game and how it's played. So this was one of Bungie's ways of trying to add and guide the new player experience. It's not really fully enough yet, but I think it is a step in the right direction. Speaking of Guardian Ranks, you'll also be able to access mods once you get far enough in your Guardian Ranks that will help you to maximize your builds and help you to essentially be able to play the game at a higher level in the end game. Also, for anybody who's watching this in the future and not in the current moment that I'm making this, in the final season before Final Shape, players will have access to the LFG system within the game, which will allow you to find new players to play with without having to go outside of the game to do that. So that'll be very helpful for the new player experience once that's implemented. Also, going back to the tower, you have access to 801, who has legacy shaders that you can buy every single week to make your Guardian look very, very cool. Also, on the topic of 801, new players do have access to Transmog, with a warning that it is kind of convoluted in the current state of how Transmog works, but you do have access to pick up 801's bounties if you want to transmog some of your favorite armor pieces. Also, as a new player, you get access to crafting, so if you ever get enough of a certain weapon's patterns, you can craft that weapon on the Enclave, which is on Mars, under the Throne World Director, and you can hone in your weapons to have the exact perks that you want them to have. I think now is a good time to talk about the activities that you have access to across the solar system as a free-to-play player. The first one is Blind Well in the Dreaming City. The next one is the Ascendant Challenges that rotate every single week in the Dreaming City. I highly recommend doing these because each time it's such a cool experience. They're so well done, and honestly, Bungie still hasn't rivaled these in terms of a weekly destination experience that rotates every single week in terms of activities. Next is the free-to-play Dreaming City mission that you have access to. There's Altar of Sorrows, which is on the moon, which is a great thing to do for leveling up weapons as well as finishing bounties. Then there's Dares of Eternity, which is probably the best 6-man activity that Bungie's added since Menagerie. You can pick up the Forerunner exotic while doing that. It's an exotic quest. Next, there is Legendary Dares of Eternity 2, so pretty cool that you can try out a legendary difficulty type of 6-man experience. Also, you can try the Defiant Battleground, the EDZ, which is now available. That used to be something that required the season pass last year, but now it's something that you can try for free this year. Next is the Neomuna Terminal Overload activity. Now granted, without Nightfall, you can't teleport to this like you kind of can if you have it, but you can drive to this activity, and this is a great activity because it drops +0s when you're doing your power leveling, and I talk about this in my guide, but this is a great activity to do when you're needing to fill in the gaps on your power level. Next is the Vex Strike Force rare public event. So this is a really rare one that's on Neomuna, but if you ever do get to experience this, this drops a guaranteed exotic, so you definitely want to take advantage of that as well and at least try it out. So next, let's talk about some of the more seasonal and time-sensitive things that you can take part in for free as long as you're there at the right times. So first we have the spring event that's called Guardian Games, which is a competition between Titans, Hunters, and Warlocks, which is coming up, so make sure you take part in that, and then also you can pick up the exotic Heir Apparent, which is only available during that time period. Also during the summer, there's the Summer Solstice, which is where we get cool armor sets that glow. During the fall, we get our Halloween event called Festival of the Lost, where Bungie allows us to vote on a few different armor sets, and whichever one wins is the armor set that we get during that event. And then also we're able to earn weapons like the Horror Story and the Braytech Werewolf. And then lastly, we have our winter event, which is called the Dawning, where you can get weapons like the Avalanche, and there's cool armor sets with the Dawning as well. Next on our list, we have dungeons. So there only is one dungeon that you can try, but it is a very good one. It's called the Prophecy Dungeon, and I highly recommend it. There's a really cool armor set that you can get from it. Also, it drops old Trials of the 9 armor back from 2017, and it also drops weapons from Trials of the 9 as well. So it's a pretty cool one that you're going to want to try, and it's something that can give you a taste of the dungeon experience within Destiny. Next is the pinnacle of Destiny, which is raids, and so you have access to 2 different raids as of right now in the game for free. One is Vault of Glass. You have access to all the raid armor within it, you have access to the weapons, you have access to the raid exotic Vex Mythoclast, you have access to the Catalyst quest once you get it, and then you can also get Spoils of Conquest from this raid as well each week, which will help you with getting Legend of Acreus, as I mentioned earlier. Also, there's the King's Fall raid, which also returned last year, and you can get all the raid armor, the weapons, the Touch of Malice, which is the raid exotic, the Catalyst for Touch of Malice, as well as spoils from this raid as well. You also have access to 2 master raids. A master raid is our harder version of the normal raid that requires much more coordination. There's Master Vault of Glass as well as Master King's Fall that you have access to. Master Vault of Glass rewards you with time lost weapons, which are better versions of the normal weapons with adept mods. Master King's Fall rewards you with harrowed weapons that are better than the normal weapons, and they can also have adept mods. There will also be a master version of whatever new reprise raid comes out in the fall. So these are all the different things that you can do as a free-to-play player for $0 and 0 cents within Destiny 2. So let me know if after hearing all this, if you think that the free-to-play experience in Destiny 2 is worth it, or if you think this is a game that requires you to buy everything in order to play.